Welcome back to HLOC Gaming. Let's take a look at the Godforge starters for Alpha and determine which one is the best. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to point out is every starter champion, there's 3 of them, all have this same aura: increase attack by 20% in all battles. Now it's very good that it's all battles, but I really wish they would have had a different aura for different champions. I assume they kind of did this because it's the standard, and the main game right now being Raid for this type of game. All their starters are HP by 15% in all battles. So I understand why they kind of followed that trend, but I would like to see them change that for the full release, that the starters have different auras to do different things, because I don't think the champions all fit exactly the same role, and we'll get into that as we go through this. Okay, as you can see here, a little bit of a game detail too. Simon clicked detail up here, which brought up this 300% attack. And obviously there will be a number in here when the alpha comes out, but it's attack one enemy for 300% attack for X damage. If this target is under drain, then deal additional damage equal to 5% of this target's max HP. So 300% attack sounds pretty good right now. Let's take a look at the next ability. Alright, for the core ability here, we got Crescent Slash. Attack all enemies for 400% attack for X damage. That has 25% additional chance to strong hit. If an enemy is defeated, reduce the cooldown of this ability by 1 turn. So I'm reading this as if you can set it up where he's killing, multiple opponents with this at a time, he's going to be able to cycle right back to it his next turn. So really, so far he's seeming like a pretty strong damage dealer. But I will get to one caveat at the end when we see his ultimate that I'm kind of not sure on. It's based on a skill. We'll see. Okay, here's the ultimate Frostfair Blade Dance. Attack 120% of attack for random enemies for X damage. Each attack has a 35% chance to place Drain 2 on the target for 2 turns. Gain 100 divinity when defeating an enemy. So basically, you have a chance to place Drain. So the kind of caveat I was talking about on the last skill was we don't entirely know what Drain does. We'll see in the next kit we have Bleed, so clearly Bleed and Drain are different. In some games, Drain does work exactly like Bleed, but since they do differentiate between the two here, I'm going to say it doesn't. In other games I've seen in, it's almost like a direct skill. You drain health and you get it yourself. So I'm wondering if there will be some kind of return on this. So this character possibly could act like a healer, but we'll have to wait and see what exactly Drain does that is different from Bleed. So if it is sort of a heal skill, then he's a damage dealer / healer, possibly. Let's get to his last, imprint skill we're going to see down here. So here's his passive, and remember you can put this on any weapon, I believe. Obviously, if you have extra copies, you wouldn't want to crunch this dude and get rid of him right away, but deals 20% increased damage to enemies under drain. So obviously, if you chose him and got multiple copies of him in the tower, it could be very useful to put that on weapons to increase that damage, Use him as a debuffer so you can buff your other champions in a sense. Okay, here we got Lady Zox. Let's take a look at her basic skill, Bloodletting. Attack an enemy for 300% attack, same as Guan Yu's in terms of percentage bonus for X damage, then has a 35% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on the target. So that's different in that the debuff is on the basic skill, whereas the debuff for Guan Yu is on your ultimate skill, but you have a higher chance to place it, I would say, because you're attacking more targets and each attack has a chance to place it. And again, bleed is just, going to be a dot of damage over time and you wouldn't get health back, as opposed to drain, which I forgot to mention before, but I'm thinking it could be kind of like leech, so maybe you're going to get something. But again, like I said, we'll have to wait and see. All right, Vision Serpent. Attack all enemies, 400% attack. Also the same percentage buff there. For X damage, that has a 25% additional chance to strong hit. 25% is also the same. If an enemy is defeated, place a speed up on this hero for 2 turns. So there, instead of cooling down your ability, you're going to be able to speed up this hero so they can get back to the skill quicker. So Again, sort of the same mechanic, but in a different way. In the previous one, you'd reduce cooldown with killing of opponents. Here, if you defeat an opponent, you get a speed up. Now, the difference is defeating more opponents won't increase the speed up. A speed up is a speed up. It's just a buff. So you kind of got to weigh between those two. Do you want to try and set it up for Guan Yu so he can cycle through that more? Or do you like this speed up ability here because of the bleed effect? But let's get to the ultimate before we make a decision. All right, the ultimate here attacks all enemies, 250% attack, 2 times for X damage. Each attack has a 35% chance to place 1 stack of bleed on a target. So with her, you have 2 chances to place the debuff of bleed, whereas with Guan Yu, you only have 1 on his ultimate. Also, the attack bonus here is higher, but you attack half the amount of times. Guan Yu was 4, this is 2, and 120 compared to 250, so it is percentage-wise a little bit more than double. Between the two so far, I actually am liking Lady Zox. More chances to place the debuff to do more damage over time. But then again, like I said, if Drain actually ends up giving us life back, that could be very good as well. But, is Drain going to give to the whole team, or is it only going to be to him? These are kind of questions we won't know until we actually try the alpha. But let's get to the passive real quick. Mouth of Thorns deal 20% increased damage to enemies under bleed. So again, their passive is focused around their particular debuff. Okay, and finally here we got Ramses. Attack one enemy, 300% attack, the same, for X damage with a 35% chance to place acid on the target for 2 turns. So just like Lady Zox, the basic ability has the chance to place the debuff. Now I'm wondering, in this instance, is acid going to be the same as poison and they just want to differentiate themselves from other games by not using the word poison? Or is it going to be acid where it does damage and it sort of weakens, That's the difference in my mind when I think of acid versus poison. Poison just kills you slowly, whereas acid causes damage and weakens you. So I have to wait and see exactly what the acid debuff does. But I assume it will be some type of dot damage over time. All right, we got the core ability here. Attacks all enemies for 400% attack. Same again for the core. For X damage with 25% additional chance to strong hit. That is also the same. If an enemy is defeated, then increase the turn meter of this hero by 30%. So again, a way to cycle back to this ability quicker. And it says if an enemy is defeated. So I just came back here to reread this just to make sure I'm not getting confused. If an enemy is defeated, reduce the cooldown of this ability by 1 turn. So I still read that as each enemy you defeat could increase this cooldown even more, but that might be wrong now that I'm reading the other one, because I don't think they would want to make one of these champions way better than the other, but you never know. All right, now that I've read this a few times, I think I was misinterpreting the first one, that each time you defeat an enemy, you would get a 1-turn cooldown for Guan Yu. I think it's just if any enemy is defeated, you get that bonus. So the 1-turn cooldown for Guan Yu, for Lady Zox, it's the speed up, and for Ramses, it's the 30% turn meter, which makes sense because these are only rares. I don't think they would want to make an ability where you could just spam, that sort of attack all enemies with 400% over and over again for Guan Yu, and then leave these guys kind of on their own without something similar. But anyways, let's get to the ultimate now for Ramses. All right, we got the ultimate here. Attacks all enemies for 500% for X damage with 75% chance to place acid on each target for 2 turns. Gains 100% or gains 100 divinity when defeating an enemy. So this is the highest percentage. Is it based on attack? When he read it, he didn't say. I don't know if this is sort of a visual bug. They forgot to add it in. So we'll have to wait and see how it kind of works out in alpha. I assume it is going to be attack. So this would make his ultimate the strongest out of all of them. And spoiler alert, I think I'm going to choose Ramses. He's the most, if you want to compare this to raid, I would say that's like Kale, assuming acid has some type of function like poison and possibly even a weaken sort of aspect to it that could differentiate it. But even if it doesn't, still going to be very strong. Also, I think the way they're going to do this alpha is the beginning few stages or more are going to be somewhat easy because they don't want people to get into it and immediately feel defeated and not want to continue on further. So because of that, I think you're going to be able to get to a good place with a strong damage dealer where you can farm other champions to fill other roles. So to me, picking the strongest, damage dealer is probably the best choice for this alpha. So I'm going to go with Ramses. But let's take a look at his passive, which will give damage to enemies affected by acid. So here we go. Deals 20% increased damage to enemies under acid. And remember, if you get multiple copies of this hero, you can use their passive and add it to a weapon to essentially give that to another hero. So when you start the alpha, you're going to see the cinematic again, and I'm going to let this play as I go over my thoughts real quick. So I think Guan Yu has the weakest basic and that it has no debuff, but the fact that it doesn't have that debuff makes me think his might be the strongest, which is Drain. It could possibly give you life back or something else. We'll have to wait and see. And again, that is only on his ultimate. For their core ability, for all three of them, they attack all opponents, and they have different sort of speed up utilities. Guan Yu, kill somebody, reduce the cooldown of your core ability by 1 turn. Ramses, kill somebody, fill your turn meter by 30%. And Lady Zox, who I think has the strongest, is a speed up for 2 turns. So the reason that's the best is because the mechanic that can get you back to a skill or through turns more quickly lasts for 2 turns, whereas the other 2, it's only in that specific turn that it affects you. And then the ultimate, Guan Yu, 4 times at random, does his debuff. Lady Zox 2 times, and then Ramses attacks everyone once. And Lady Zox, 2 times for all opponents. And they all put their debuff down. So for that one, I think Ramses is the strongest because he has the highest percentage, which was 500. So like I said, he's just the best at straight up damage. Guan Yu possibly a healer, and then Lady Zox possibly the best self buffer because she can keep maybe that speed up longer and cycle through turns the best out of any of them. So let me know down below who you're going to choose. And like I said, I'm going for Ramses because I think that will get me to a point where I can farm other champions to fill other roles. So Simon shows off this is their new main screen. And I was thinking, this is the 2D version. They're working on the 3D right now. But I think it looks a lot better because if you're kind of trying to guess what the story is, Gilgamesh is up to something smashing. We got, heroes fighting gods. The previous sort of castle they were at looked like it was pretty built up, right? Pretty established. Whereas this looks more, I don't want to say disheveled, but it's not as built up. So it gives you more of that sense like, your partners or your heroes are scattered to the wind and you have to regroup. You're kind of starting from scratch. You've been left for dead or you've been defeated in some way. So to me, that kind of more of a stripped down look. And also the tone of it was a bit brighter. It wasn't as a dark of an aesthetic as the old one. Does give that sense that, you're kind of starting over and you're building your team up again to take on whatever challenge we're going to have in this game. All right, that was about it for this. Let's get to Thursday's podcast. All right, on this week's podcast, we got Heimdall Games. And what you're seeing here is their little demo or alpha. I'm not sure what they call it. That's out now. They said the core loop is about 15 to 20 minutes, but they've given it to some people who've played for about 3 or 4 hours. They're interested in making a better idle game, and we'll go over kind of what they said. I'm not going to go too in depth on this because it does seem like they're still pretty preliminary, even with this demo out now that looks pretty good that you're seeing. So you'll see here in a minute, the gentleman on the left, his name is Ori. And the gentleman on the right, his name is also Ori, but he goes by Ledarsky, which appears to be his last name. So sort of the long and short of it is they want to bring more aspects that you typically see in a game like Raid Shadow Legends / Godforge into the idle RPG scene, dungeon bosses, sets, things of that nature. So they do have some experience making games as well. At least Ledarsky worked at Plarium for 3 years, and Ori worked there as well. I'm not sure how long he worked there, though. As of right now, it's only those two in the company, and they outsource the work they need done that they can't do themselves. They also said they want to bring more of a Western art style to idle games, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. They said, the ones they see are mostly Eastern. I would say recently the more popular ones are, but I do think they're still Western art style idle RPGs, but they are definitely older and don't have the depth that they're indicating they want to bring to these type of games. So they did kind of hit the nail on the head there. They said the reason they want to bring these features into an idle game is because idle games feel so linear. There's sort of no horizontal progression, I guess you could call it. So they want to add some more depth in that sense. That tech demo you saw there also took the two of them about a month to create. They think in about a year they'll have the core game done, and then about another 6 months after that with refinements through testing, putting it out to people, that they will actually be able to launch the game in about 18 months from now. We'll see. They do have some experience, and this being 2D rather than 3D, they said they can produce much faster, but I would honestly be surprised if they can get it done that quickly. What they're really trying to see is how small they can get the game, in the sense of like, or I use the example, what if we just have 10 champions of every rarity when we're doing these tests to really boil down how we want our game to work? Because it seems like feedback is going to be a huge part of their game, because why they're on here is they're kind of trying to get the community started similar to the Fateless community, and then really put out, like you already saw, that small demo there to keep getting feedback to sort of build the game that way. I am interested to see how they do. Like they said, they do feel too linear right now when they are still truly an idle game. But then I feel like games have tried to add, clan bosses and gear, but not sets. I will say I haven't seen sets in a idle game yet. Not to say it's not out there, but I don't try them all. But they add so much stuff that an idle game now becomes a non-idle game, and really the only idle part of it is reward. So to me, idle rewards doesn't make it an idle RPG. In my mind, if you truly created an idle game, during the week when I'm busy at work or whatever, I could log in, 20, maybe 30 minutes max a day to sort of set stuff up to be done while it's idle. And then on the weekend, maybe I can dig in more when I have more time. I always kind of envision if somebody, let's say somehow you could take Raid and make it an idle game, I would have almost like, I'm going to call them action tickets. I would log in, certain tasks cost a certain amount of tickets, and you only get so many a day. And maybe that's kind of how you monetize it. As people buy shards, their VIP level goes up, and maybe you get more action tickets that way. Or maybe you just buy like a premium pass for a month or 6 months and you get more action tickets. I don't know. That's just kind of to monetize it, just an idea. But the point is, I'd log in certain tasks, like let's say clan boss costs 3 action tickets, 10 runs on a dungeon costs 1 action ticket, that type of thing. Arena 5 fights costs 1 action ticket, and you just set that all up like on a list. You allocate those action tickets how you want, and then you hit go, and then it just runs idly, and you come back tomorrow and you check it. But another way to help with things like that, have sort of the filters for loot similar to Raid. So you sell stuff you don't need. And then also I'd like to see a system, maybe it's only a few champs at a time. You could set sort of stat priorities or gear sets or both. So then when you come back into the game, the gear you did collect, it'll kind of show you, oh, this piece of gear might fit for this hero or that hero. Or if it doesn't do that, you can just go to that hero and just click something that shows the new gear you got, and it'll kind of highlight what pieces might be good to fit the priorities you set for that hero. Just try to automate as much of it as possible. So then when you're kind of on the weekends, like, oh, now I need to set up my quote unkillable clan boss team, right? So then when I do that action for the day, it's done, or I need to buff them up, right? So you can spend little time during the week and maybe more on the weekend. That's kind of how I've always thought the ultimate idle RPG game should be. All right, a last minute drop here. When I was about to release my video, we got Ymir, and you'll see Heimdall in a second. Ymir, in Norse mythology, was a ancient giant that was killed by Odin and his brothers, and the body parts were actually used to create Midgard. That's where the humans live. So, not really sure exactly what that type of character would be in terms of skills. Obviously, seems kind of ice-based there, but we'll have to wait and see. And then we know Heimdall right here, the Bifrost, the eyes of the realm. So yeah, just thought I would add this here at the end real quick so you guys could see it. That's a new character we haven't seen before. But let's kind of try and take a closer look at Heimdall's model real quick. Let's take a look here. That sword looks very cool. You know what it almost reminds me of in a way? It's kind of like an updated version of He-Man's sword from like the 80s cartoon. I know the coloring is way off and different, but like the look of the sword, right? You could definitely see Heimdall like lifting this thing up in the air and yelling, "I have the power." Let's see if I can get a good shot. You can look at his belt right here. It looks almost like a ram's head. It's very hard to see, but that's what it looks like to me. And it does look like there might be some type of symbol on the ram's forehead. Yeah, you can kind of see that pattern there. But I think, right, you can see the ear, and then it's hard to see, but it looks like the horns right there. This is a very cool model. This might be one of the best so far, with the helmet too, with like the extra eyes, the sort of implications of him being such a powerful figure in terms of seeing everything in the realms. Let's see what else we can see. Obviously, the chest armor looks great. The beard. Yeah, let's just take a look at the cape real quick. Oh, I didn't notice that. Like, it kind of connects in the back. Interesting. And this sort of ice feel here, and then that symbol again that has to do with, I believe, the faction. You can kind of see it on this pole. You can't see it real well right now, but it's on there as well. So that must, oh, I didn't notice that. Looks like there's a face on the back of the helm too. It's very hard to see, but look at that. Yeah, so we can see, into the future and what's behind him, kind of all seeing. That's very cool. Nice. I like that. All right, let's just take a quick look at Ymir here. Obviously a frost giant, you could say, covered in symbols that I don't know what they do. Probably had something to do with, his people or his tribe, whatever you want to call it. Interesting. Yeah, I'll be waiting to see more on his kit, but that's about it for this week. Let me know down below what you think the starter champs, who you're going to be choosing. I am going to follow that other game. I did already join their Discord. I forget the name of their game, but I'll at least try to link to the Fateless episode down below, and then you can find the link for their Discord in their episode. And if it turns into something, maybe I'll start covering here, because I am interested in idle games, and obviously I gave that description of kind of my idea of the ultimate idle game. I've tried a bunch of them, none for a very long time, usually a few months at most. This has been H-Lock. Thanks for watching. Bye.